right. So welcome to the next session on the future of distributed validator technology and SSV.Network. We have with us here Alon Muroch, CEO and co-founder of SSV.Network, and my name is Unnawut, head of venture builder at SEB10X. Big pleasure to have you on our session today, Alon.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so I think there's been a lot of recent developments, especially on Ethereum, I guess the past year, despite the market situation, right? We had the merge happening sometime late last year. We had withdrawals open, and now, right, what's next, right? And I think DVT, or Distributed Validator Technology, is one of the kind of like big areas where people are starting to talk about and starting to implement them, right? And SSV is one of the leading players there. So maybe as a start, Alon, could you help introduce us an overview of what SSV.Network is?
Sure. So as a kind of I would say a broader context, what happened in Ethereum the past, I would say 1 or 2 years, especially with kind of focusing on a roll-up based future for Ethereum, a roadmap for Ethereum, is that the entire block production for Ethereum basically was externalized to third parties. So from staking to MEV all the way to L2s, basically all of those 3 components are now processing 100% of the Ethereum transactions. And so obviously staking is what secures everything. MEV is what basically dictates a marketplace for transactions and ordering, and L2s are obviously the extension of Ethereum for scale. And so within that, it's very, very important that the staking component will be as true to the ethos of Ethereum as possible, which is decentralization, which is censorship resistance, which is kind of a world computer. You know, if you take the kind of the initial or the first kind of idea of what Ethereum is. And I think in that area, we're facing tremendous challenges because on the one hand, we have a lot of innovation and a lot of applications for staking coming up, existing ones and obviously new ones. And there's a lot of Ethereum ETH flowing to those services, and those services are essentially the ones securing Ethereum. But on the other hand, we're basically everyone is using the same technology stack. So from your solo staker at home all the way to the biggest staking services out there, because of the way Ethereum staking was developed, because of the slashing conditions and so on, it's very hard to kind of develop new types of ways to manage your infrastructure. And I think DVT really brings out kind of the next generation infrastructure for Ethereum staking. The core idea there is that you can take an Ethereum validator and split it up into independent operators, and those operators can collectively execute on the behalf of the validator without needing to trust one another. So the trust component is really different in kind of versus the legacy technology or legacy tech stack we're using. DVT is doing that by embracing 2 different technologies. One is a QBFT consensus protocol, and the other one is threshold signatures. And so together they decide on what to sign and then sign it in a much more distributed way than the current infrastructure enables. And if you put it all together into a network, then all of a sudden you have a very powerful component, kind of a building block for Ethereum staking applications, where anyone can build on top of that protocol because they already have services and operators on that network ready to be used by developers to start running what we call DVT clusters. Basically, a cluster is the equivalent of a validator on Ethereum or multiple validators on Ethereum. And so if you put it all together into a network, you get basically SSV. SSV is a network, a DVT network, where on the one hand, you have node operators running the protocol client, and they are ready to be basically paired up into clusters very, very easily. It's just literally just an Ethereum transaction to create those clusters. And from that moment on, you can start running your validators. And if you think about developers coming up with new and interesting applications for staking, then having this reusable, easy to use, scalable network infrastructure for their staking operations, it's a very powerful primitive for the staking business.
I see. So maybe just a quick summary on that, right? So since Ethereum transitioned from proof of work to proof of stake, now we have like hundreds and thousands of validators staking on Ethereum network and helping secure the network, right? And
Yeah.
as far as I know, since I'm also running Ethereum validators myself, we can only have like one instance running the validator, right? So when the instance goes offline for whatever reason, internet issues or upgrades, you actually your entire validator goes offline, right? And if you are going to set up two servers to support one validators, that so far hasn't been possible because then you are subject to slashing penalties, which is pretty high as well, right? So DVT has come in and helped that by instead of having a single server for validators, you're able to split that out into say 3 or 5 operators running, right? And then you only need perhaps like 3 out of 5 of them in order to sign the blocks, right? So it helps. I think the keyword is redundancy, right, and safety for everyone as a staker. So that's interesting.
So that's kind of from the operational point of view, but if you take a larger overview of the Ethereum ecosystem, not just your a specific staking service, then you can reach a much more robust, censorship-resistant, client diversified type of Ethereum, which we all want, just by distributing how validators are working. If you look at today's network topology for Ethereum, there's probably around 5 or 6 entities controlling Ethereum, right? They're controlling probably 80 or 90% of the stake. Most of those entities are in the US. And so all of those things put together also creates a very high systemic risk on Ethereum, because again, if you want to be censorship resistant, if you want to be decentralized, if you want to be something that lives on and not susceptible for any type of government or any type of hacker or so on, then it's extremely important to embrace technology which enables you to do that.
Yeah, sounds good. So now we know about DVT, right? Could you share us a bit of the landscape, like who are the main players in DVT and how you are different from say other players in the market?
Sure. There's a few players out there. I think 4 or 5 the last time I counted. Some of them are doing a DVT specific application and not infrastructure. So for example, you have projects doing a staking pool coupled together with DVT. You have other projects doing something similar to us. You have other projects which are not doing DVT networks at all. They're doing some manual DVT cluster formation, which is kind of a much more coordinated, intensive type of DVT, which is really not kind of focused on what we're focused on, which is developers and ease of use. And so this landscape is starting to evolve, and I would suspect that more will come in as mainnet starts rolling out, and obviously people see adoption and so on. I think that all in all, I think that the concept of DVT is kind of the narrative, and then you have different implementations. And I think that landscape is extremely important, both because you have new ideas and new approaches, and also because I think it kind of cements this type of technologies to go to the go-to technology or the gold standard for how you run validators. And I think in of itself, that's important. Like, the vision ultimately, of course, we as a project want to succeed. That's obvious. But I think the vision in general is that we as an industry, we need to shift away from single point of failure infrastructure for staking to something distributed. And so I think you can only do that by having a really vibrant DVT marketplace, because as much as I want my project to be successful, ultimately, if Ethereum is successful, we are successful. If Ethereum has some issues or challenges, we need to figure out how to solve them. And so I think the bigger question is the bigger vision we need to have is how do we transition the 18 million ETH at stake or 19 million ETH at stake to use either DVT or being solo stakers, which is a crucial component as well. Basically, how do we get it to unwind this type of very centralistic landscape of Ethereum staking we're seeing today. And so as a whole, I think DVT is probably the kind of the more scalable solution, but we also need to keep in mind that solo stakers can play a major role in that as well. Yeah.
Right, that's great. That's great. We did mention about this before the session started about staking versus DVT, right? And I think there's a lot of confusion out there still that DVT is replacing staking or liquid staking, right? Can you maybe elaborate on that, whether that's true or not?
So when we started developing the first POC with DVT back in like 2.5 years ago, it was pretty obvious to me that there's going to be a lot of innovation around staking applications. So a staking application is basically the application you're interacting with. So it's Lido, it's Rocket Pool, it's Stakewise, it's Frax, it's all of those types of Coinbase. It's all of those types of applications that ultimately the staker comes and stakes with. But all of them, there's a common truth between all of them, which is all of them need infrastructure. All of them need somewhere to run their validators. That's whatever the type of application you create, from Rocket Pool all the way to Coinbase, whatever you're creating, somebody needs to run validators. And so that's where the DVT technology or DVT solution comes into play, because I think that this question of where to run those validators is the important question for Ethereum. And so that's where SSV focuses on. And our strategic decision was to focus on developers, because we truly believe that most of the stake will come from developers building applications. And so by tackling that, by building them a ready-made, easy-to-use infrastructure, they can start running clusters in a few minutes. Which is scalable. They can run thousands and tens of thousands of those validators and clusters, and it's permissionless, it's transparent, it has a network behind it and a community behind it developing different data analytics utilities and key management utilities and so on. I believe that they will transition to use DVT. And so it's very much complementary. It's not that or the other. It's actually both. So you need the applications, but you also need the infrastructure. And so those two things combined, I think, work really, really well. And I think we're starting to see the adoption. And so yeah.
Right. So DVT and SSV is not replacing staking services like Lido or Rocket
Not at all.
Pool.
It's very complementary. Very complementary.
Right. Yeah, sounds good. So I think DVT has been in recent developments, right? And SSV is actually going mainnet pretty soon. You've been in testnet for months now. Can you kind of maybe elaborate a bit what are the challenges that have been taking DVT quite some time to develop and go to mainnet?
I think that, so we've been in public testnet for 2 years now. And the reason why we wanted to do that is twofold. One is the technology itself, you want to make sure it's been running for a while to just be robust enough. You want your code to be bulletproof, you want it to be scalable, you want it to be performant, you want it to handle different situations. And so that takes time. And so in that, that's reason number one. Reason number two is, again, if we go back to what we are building, we're building an ecosystem of developers building on a new technology, right? It's like, Arbitrum or Optimism or Starkware, like all of those ecosystems, they're not just developing a technology, they're developing the ecosystem that actually uses the technology. And so that takes time. And so in that, we have a bunch of different things we're doing, from grants and all the way to an ecosystem fund, which really taps into that. And so we've managed to bring tens of projects to build on top of us. I think, our grant program been running for a year. I think we had close to 100 applications. And so that takes time as well. And so in that kind of the arc of time we've spent on, and the mainnet rollout will actually show that. So we wanted to get to mainnet where, we have those applications running on testnet transitioning to mainnet. We wanted to have that client working well. We wanted to have that ecosystem in place, because otherwise, you're going out with a piece of technology that nobody knows about. And so that takes time. Yeah.
And good, I mean, you mentioned ecosystem fund and grants, right? Can you elaborate a bit more? Like, what kind of
Yeah.
projects are you looking for? What are interesting projects you have seen so far?
Yeah. So we have a grants program which has been running for a year. It's close to I think $7 million in total, and it basically looks for anyone, any projects building something interesting on DVT and SSV. So anything from staking pool to institutional staking to data analytics to key management, like all of those types of things. And so you can freely, anyone can, if you have a good idea, you can approach and set up an application, and that will be reviewed by a distributed centralized committee from the SSV community. And if you graduate that, you have the Eco Fund, which we basically it's a real world, VCs investing in DVT projects. And so you can have that really long pathway where you can have your initial kind of type of grant and all the way to kind of your round A building on top of SSV. And again, that kind of akin to the strategy where we're really focused on developers. That's what I think will bring us engagement and adoption. And so we're heavily focused on that. And ultimately developers want an opportunity and they want a technology which is easy to use, and we're hoping to do both of those things at once.
Right. And let's say like I believe there are so many builders on the call here, right? What would be like a good start for them to learn more about grants and ecosystem funds?
So go to our website, and first of all, you can see the application process, but also you can see previous grants. Everything is quite public, and so you can see previous grants, you can see previous applications, you can see the type of grants that and the kind of the way projects are positioning themselves and approaching kind of this DVT technology. And so you can learn by this time you have so many applications already been submitted and some of them approved, some of them rejected. So you can have that. You can learn how to do that pretty well, and obviously we can help. And so if you have a good idea, if you're in the industry, in the staking business, and you're looking for either to start or transition to DVT, then definitely approach us. And in general, you can visit our Discord and so on. There's a pretty vibrant community there. You can ask questions, you can connect and see what other people are doing and so on.
Now, looking into far futures, like a few years down the road, when SSV is already deployed on mainnet, DVT is now, established. Is it done? What are you looking in the next like 2-3 years? What's going to be like the main challenges or main development in the longer term?
So I think there's a few paths going forward for SSV. One path will be potential path will be to extend or expand to other blockchains. And another one is to expand within this block production industry happening on Ethereum. So you either expand vertically or horizontally. And so I think that one of the interesting things I'm looking at is this emerging industry of block production between staking, MEV, and L2s. I think that all of those things are interconnected. And so I think that if DVT is setting itself up to be the gold standard on staking, well, you can't have staking without MEV, and ultimately that will reach into L2s as well. And so I see that there's going to be a lot of vertical integration between all of those three components. And I strongly believe that DVT can alleviate and solve some of the issues in other components as well, in MEV with maybe decentralized builders, and L2s with decentralized sequencers and stuff like that. And so I think that's going to be either way, that's going to be the future of SSV. And obviously, in the meantime, other than just expanding to other places, it's also a case of fine-tuning and optimizing both the protocol, but also the how we approach developers. Again, I think the vision is, how do we transition from having 18 million ETH at stake controlled by 6 entities to 18 million ETH at stake controlled by nobody? And so I think that's really the grand vision. I think that in general, liquid staking tokens are, and everything that attached to them, I think are the next bull market catalyzers, because I think it brings first of all, it brings so much capital into tokenized way to integrate into DeFi, which otherwise it would not have done. A lot of people are not interacting with DeFi because it's too risky, but a lot of them will do staking. And so there's going to be something in the middle where, all of a sudden those people going from holding Ethereum in their cold wallet all the way to being in liquid staking form, tokenized on the blockchain. The gap between that and participating in some sort of DeFi is not that big anymore. And so I think that will bring both an incredible amount of opportunity to DeFi, incredible amount of opportunity to staking, and anything in the middle will be pretty amazing. And so there's a lot to do with staking, but there's, if we're looking 2, 3, 4 years down the road, I think that you'll ultimately see SSV expanding to other blockchains and potentially vertically kind of expanding to MEV and L2s. But again, that's kind of a long-term future, but I think that's where the value is.
I see. If you don't mind, I want to touch on the L2 a bit, right? So there's sequencers, right? Roll-ups need sequencers, to batch transactions onto the layer ones, right? Can you help kind of paint the picture how would SSV involve in that? I would say, is it the sequencers that SSV or DVT would help, or are there other areas, and how would that work?
I think that if you generalize what a DVT protocol is, you can look at it as a decide sign type of protocol. So you first decide on what to sign, then you sign it. And the interesting part of it is you can have a single signature representing many operators behind it, and the underlying protocol doesn't even know about it. So, in Ethereum case, we're using multiple operators to sign for a single validator. The beacon chain doesn't really know what DVT is. It simply sees a valid signature. And so if you extend or expand that notion, ultimately sequencers are signing stuff as well. Builders are signing stuff as well. If you're looking at cross-chain bridges, they're signing stuff as well. If you're looking at oracles, they are signing stuff as well. So all of those types of things can potentially benefit from a distributed and decentralized protocol doing what currently is a single point of failure entity is doing. And so that's what I'm saying about expanding to those types of places, because I think that can bring a lot of value. First, it can bring a lot of economical value, and you can build applications on things that otherwise are not suitable for building applications on. But then you can help those types of places in distribution, in expanding who controls the protocol and how, and so on and so forth. And so I'm seeing that in multiple places, in sequencers, in builders, in bridges, in oracles, in multi-sig wallets, like you name it. Basically, all major application or all major building block components of Ethereum are using some sort of the side sign type of algorithm. And so DVT can go there. Now, the question is where it makes the most sense and where the market is the biggest. And so I think that there's a lot of innovation around that that can be made and can be kind of fold value into the SSV protocol.
Good. So we do actually have some time left. Maybe perhaps we can go through one last topic. I think one interesting thing about SSV is that you're incentivizing people to be running and becoming operators, right? Can you talk a bit more on perhaps tokenomics or the incentivization model, where you allow other incentivized operators to be operating on SSV and help validating?
So all of those types of things are yet to be announced. Can't really expand on that yet. But I think that kind of, the core economical value we're seeing within the protocol is the coming together of service providers in the form of node operators and developers coming in and needing those node operators to run their infrastructure. And I think there's a lot of opportunity there for existing service providers, like the biggest names in the industry, but also smaller ones coming in, because again, SSV is uniquely positioned between all of the other different DVT solutions, which is permissionless. Anyone can be a node operator. Anyone can be running a node and offering their services. And so I think in that there's a lot of economical benefit and interesting things to do, where you can bring solo stakers, home stakers, amateur stakers, small business staking, small businesses doing staking, all the way up to the institutional ones. There's gonna pretty big long tail of operators there, and all of them can fit into different services. I know that if you're looking at projects like Lido is looking to get into integrating permissionless operators into their protocol. Rocket Pool are already doing that. Stakewise are going that direction as well. So you're seeing everything is moving to that place. And so I think the opportunity for anyone who's interested in doing that is to kind of join the network, run an operator, and hopefully earn rewards for performing that duty. And for developers, it's just enjoying the best infrastructure they can get. We have a lot of plans coming up for mainnet rollout. We'll be announcing them and kind of both partners and kind of plans and so on and so forth. But again, I think that if you combine the vision of we want to transition everyone to DVT technology, obviously using SSV, and we're focused on developers, I think that you can kind of figure out where are we heading in terms of our approach to the world and how we want to how do we want to capture the market.
Good. Yeah, so this comes to the end of the session. Any final thoughts you want to share with our audience here at Redefine Tomorrow?
I think that we're on the verge of a major transition in Ethereum. I think there's going to be major innovation across the entire kind of staking, DeFi, trading type of marketplaces. It's going to be super exciting, and I think that the trend is pretty clear for me right now. And so if you have a good idea, if you want to get involved in the staking business, please get in touch and hopefully apply for a grant, hopefully build on SSV. And yeah.
Sounds good. So this is Alon Muroch, CEO and co-founder of SSV.Network. Thank you so much, Alon, for joining the Redefine Tomorrow session today. And hopefully we'd like to see you again at our next time next year. Thank you so much, Alon Muroch.
Thank you for having me.